And welcome in, everybody, to a Tuesday edition of Barrett's 365 here on JAKIB Sports. I'm your host, Zander Krause. That's my co-host, Johnny Mack, John McMullen, here with you live today, the Tuesday after the Super Bowl, as we officially really have now turned our sights to the NFL offseason. We've been doing it for a little bit here in Philly, but now the entire season is behind us. Johnny Mack, how you doing on this Tuesday morning, my friend?
New offensive line coach. Happy new offensive line coach day. I don't know how many people are going to be happy about it, but because of Jeff Stoutland's reputation, but the guy tasked with replacing him is going to be Chris Cooper. Chris Cooper, good player back in the day.
He was. He started in, I think, like 79 of 90 games or something. So he definitely was a good player to start that many games. But John, we will get into that. That's obviously the first piece of news that we'll hit on. I got plenty of great topics today. I want to start here, though, John, with Chris Cooper, because I think it's easy as an Eagle fan and even a reporter like yourself of the Eagles to compare to Jeff Stoutland. Obviously, Jeff Stoutland is a Hall of Fame caliber position coach. If you take Jeff Stoutland out of the picture, is this a good hire? And what I mean by that is if we didn't have Jeff Stoutland and we were like a regular team with O-line coaches, would we be happy about this hire? He doesn't really have a whole lot of feathers in the cap there, John.
Yeah, I mean, it depends how you look at it. He was in a position where it's just like here. So, they want to blame the head. They want to blame the coach for their offensive line issues. And it's not unique in any city. That's what happens. And they've struggled on the offensive line for a number of years, especially on the interior. They've struggled in the running game. Tons of injuries last year, personnel problems. It depends how you look at it. But where he's coming off and the fact that his contract expired and they had no interest in bringing him back, he was scapegoated there for their issues. So talk about scapegoating here. So
if you're going to just scapegoat, or was he?
Oh, yeah, no question. He was a scapegoat. I mean, you go out and you spend a lot of money on a really good center, and he's got 3 concussions and barely plays. You spend a lot of money on a right guard who doesn't play that well. Maybe that is on him. So a lot of injuries in the other. Donovan Jackson was a first round pick who did a nice job, but was hurt missed 4 or 5 games. Injuries are something obviously you can't control, as you saw it kind of derail the Eagles this year on the offensive line. But I mean, on paper, it's not going to look good because the running game wasn't good in Minnesota. And some of the issues I just talked about, the fact that they wanted to move on from him. Now, that doesn't mean he's a bad coach, but that's how you're judged in this league. So it doesn't differ in Minnesota than it does here. And when something doesn't succeed, the coaches are going to be blamed more than the players. I blame the players more than the coaches. Pretty consistent with that. But yeah, I mean, it's anybody's going to be difficult coming into this situation, but the Eagles struggled, at least against their standard, this past season with one guy who's regarded as one of the best offensive and has been able to, there's very few guys. Vic has done it. Stout has done it. There's very few guys that can burst through that line that I just talked about. Typically, I would say 90% of the time, the offensive coach is going to get blamed or the defensive coach is going to get blamed. There's a few. And Stoutland was able to burst through that, and Vic is able to go through that where they get the benefit of the doubt. Very few people do in coaching. He's obviously in a different category as all the new coaches are. So he'll be judged, and he should be judged on his merit. But when you look at it compared to the resumes, it's not going to look good. But how was it ever going to look good? They want to change philosophies. And he has a history in the wide zone stretch stuff that goes all the way back to Alex Gibbs. And he runs that type of scheme, and that's what they want to run. And Stout doesn't want to run it. I mean, that's what this all comes down to.
Yeah.
The question is why do you want to run it? That's the question. And that to me is a bigger problem. That's NFL wide. Look, Greg Allman is a good reporter down in Tampa, covers the Bucs, and he had I just saw when I got up this morning. 12 coaches are now gone from Todd Bowles' 2025 staff in Tampa Bay.
Oh my goodness.
12. It's like I don't understand how these teams operate. So now you're going to run it back, and I'm bringing us up for a couple of reasons. One, because they've essentially moved on from most of the staff. And two, I think you take the emotion out of it when you look at how other teams do it. So now they're going to come back in 2026 with Todd Bowles, a veteran coach who built up trust with some of these people. Maybe not all of them because he's had such turnover at offensive coordinator, but certainly a lot of them. And then you're going to go with a bunch of new guys and say, go out there and do it and improve. It doesn't make any sense on any level. Can somebody tell me how it makes sense? But that's how they do it. That's how they do it in the NFL. It's not just the Eagles.
I'm with you. I mean, that to me is crazy, but it is what it is. John, Chris Cooper's hired. For those who don't know, he's 43 years old. All right, from Anchorage, Alaska, played his college ball at North Dakota. Not that matters all that much. He did have an 8-year playing career as a 5th-round draft pick to Denver. Started 79 and 90 games. How about that, folks? In his last 2 seasons, he blocked for Peyton Manning. So that's kind of the rundown on him as a person. He's coached the Vikings O-line for the last 4 years, from 22 to 2026. And then this year he was quietly let go. So kind of fired from that staff. And they're bringing in a new guy over there in Minnesota. John, how much of a concern is it that he was let go? I know you called him a scapegoat, but, I think this is a little bit of an uphill battle here right now in Philly to be the O-line coach here. I know we got great players, but there's a lot of question marks about a lot of those great players. And I think this team needs a good O-line coach to kind of get the best out of them. And Chris Cooper coming off of firing, I know you called it a scapegoat. How much concern lies with that part of this hiring?
Well, he didn't get fired. His contract expired. So,
Oh, I thought you said yesterday his contract didn't expire. He got fired.
Well, I may have, but if I did, I was incorrect. So his contract got expired. It was his 4th year, so 2 and 2.
Okay.
So it expired, but they didn't want to bring him back.
Right. So it wasn't a firing, it was
exactly
type of thing. Okay.
Exactly. So, it's, potato, yada, yada. They didn't want him back. But his contract expired. So it's easy to frame it, to say, well, it's not that bad, but it is what it is. And they were ineffective. And the biggest issue from people I'm told there is, look, they put a lot of draft assets into the offensive line because they've been struggling to fix their offensive line for years. They used a 1st-round pick on Garrett Bradbury. He underperforms, especially compared a lot of people, he had a lot of movement skills for what they run, the Alex Gibbs Shanahan type stuff, the stretch stuff. A lot of people compared him to Kelsey. That's how athletic he is. He wasn't Jason Kelsey, to put it mildly, but they finally give up on him. He goes to New England this year, didn't have a great Super Bowl, but he was in the Super Bowl and he played better than he played in Minnesota.
Right.
So they drafted a kid in the 2nd round, Ed Ingram from LSU, to be a guard. Dismal. PFF rankings every year in Minnesota, bottom 5, just terrible, just abysmal. He goes to Houston. It's pretty good. And they're obviously a playoff team. And then if you go back even further, they used the second round pick on Ezra Cleveland. Now, some of these were before Chris got there, so he's not responsible for the draft. And not that he would be anyway, offensive line coach. And again, he leaves. They trade him because he underachieves to what they expected. And he's better in Jacksonville when he leaves. That to me is what I was told that stood out, and the reason they didn't want to bring him back. Similar to, why they fired their GM, because he made such a horrible evaluation at the quarterback position. But in the case of Chris, that's 3 high-level prospects,
right,
that didn't improve, or supposedly high-level prospects. And the bottom line is now you have evidence of them on the other side playing better. That to me is the biggest concern when I look at Chris Cooper. But maybe they're just not that good. They weren't great. They just were like average, which was a lot better than they were in Minnesota. So also, if you look at their running game over the last 4 years, 3 of the 4 years they were near the bottom of the league. It's like, what are we doing here? Now, I don't think that Jeff Stoutland leaving had anything to do with anything other than they're changing schemes, and he's not on board with that. But the bigger question to me isn't about Chris Cooper or Jeff Stoutland. It's about, why are you changing? Why? Now the Eagles obviously have a better idea and a better they understand where they're going personnel wise. That the people they have, the legendary people they have, were legendary under the Stoutland scheme. Under the Stoutland, his sort of Alex Gibbs is Dave McNally. That's what they were successful in. Now that they're entrenched veterans, you want to move them into it. It doesn't. Yeah, it doesn't make any sense to me, unless you're going to turn over the personnel and say, well, Lane's retiring soon. Landon's just not going to be healthy. And then you're going to go in a different direction. And they have a better, obviously, handle on that than I do. Yeah, but that to me,
I do see where you're coming from with this. I mean, and you said this since before they made this change, John, with Sean Mannion and this new offense, that they're not built for this scheme. And now that they're switching it, you're seeing that you're not seeing it yet, but we're speculating, and in some areas not speculating, that they don't have the personnel that lines up with this. I mean, you could even make an argument, John, they don't have the receivers to play this. They don't have the running back to play it. We don't even have to get to the quarterback. Is Saquon Barkley built for a West Coast spread offense? I was reading this resource.
He's not the most patient runner, which I pointed out. You need patience.
I was reading this thing over the weekend. It's like this by Mark Lawrence, Football 101 on the West Coast offense. And I'm reading this website he's got about it. It's really good, very, very thorough, very, very football-y type of, write-up. And I'm reading him write about what the running back's role is in the offense. And I'm like, I don't know if Saquon Barkley does that well.
Well, he doesn't. When it comes to the passing game, he doesn't. I mean, but
passing, you need a pass protect. You need to stretch the field wide, like you always say, stretch wide on the run game and then get back upfield, patient, wait for the hole to open. I don't know. I mean, it's going to be interesting to see. I don't want to put a limit on what the players can do, but it does seemingly seem like not the right fit of an offense for the personnel as it is right now.
Yeah, I don't get it. I don't get it. It's got nothing to do with the coaches. I don't get it. I don't get you. You built this team in a certain way, and I get it. If you're signaling, hey, this is a team on the descent, like I've been sort of intimating, but nobody agrees with me from a personnel standpoint on the offensive side of the football. And you're signaling we're gonna we're going to revamp this entire offense over the next couple of years and bring in what essentially they've done defensively, which Howie gave some hints about that after the season. We're going to have to start drafting heavy on offense like we've been doing on. So that indicates they're going to bring in younger players, right, and they're going to start drafting for this particular scheme. I don't like the West Coast. It's not the West Coast scheme. It's not Bill Walls. So I don't like, it's not, but it's a lot different than what the Eagles were.
Well, what is it then? Is it a hybrid? Like, let's say the Eagles are here, and the West Coast is here. Are they here?
It's a hybrid. Okay, it's a Shanahan Kubiak scheme,
right? Gotcha.
More than that. Which,
the West Coast is kind of the full version of the full, doing that type of offense, spread offense.
Well, no, I Bill, it was a lot more complicated, and again, the game has changed so much. You really can't run it to the level that Bill Walsh would run it because you just don't have the time to practice and all that stuff that we always talk about. It's been legislated out of the game, so you got to dumb it down to a certain extent. I would say it's dumbed down from that is how I would describe it. And McVay calls it the illusion of complexity. So that's where in the passing game, that's where the eye candy comes into it, the motion, the formational adjustments, releasing Puka Nacua through the B gap inside at times, things like that. It's about making the defense use their eyes and not blow coverages and stay disciplined and all that kind of stuff. But from and that's the passing game, which I'm sure we'll discuss multiple times during the offseason. But for the running game, for this impact, it's similar in that, but really, if you go, the crux of it was Denver and the Terrell Davis and Alex Gibbs and the joke that Denver could draft anybody and they'd get 1,000 yards. They had a ton of success,
right? So
everybody copied it, and that's another thing I don't like. I don't like copiers. I don't like.
John, real quick though. So in theory, the offensive line coach fits what they're trying to do. But we don't really know that the players fit what they're trying to do, or at least speculation based on what we've seen would be that it's not really the kind of players, offensive linemen that we do have in Philly. We do have, I love the word we used the other day, mauler, like Landon Dickerson as a mauler. If he's not going to be able to be a mauler anymore, then what type of O-lineman will he be?
Yeah, well, if you're going to look at them and say, who's the least fit for this scheme, I would say Landon. Number one. And that's even before you get to the injuries because he's just a big physical guy. And you're telling them to run out. Basically, the whole idea is that the wide zone is you kick off the ball and just immediately hit the angle, whether you're going left or right. So you're reach blocking for the football film there. Everybody's reach blocking. Does that sound like that? Sounds like Kelsey. Doesn't sound like Landon. So, and then Lane Johnson again is no doubt about it, Hall of Famer in my mind. He's been doing it one way for how many years, and now you're going to say at this age, hey Lane, we're going to do it different. And even Jordan, who Jeff Stoutland built from literal scratch, for lack of a better term. Never played a down of organized football before Jeff Stoutland got his hands on.
Couldn't buckle a helmet up. I'll say that's scratch.
Yeah. And now you're going to, hey, Jordan, we're going to do it differently. It just doesn't make sense. And the only thing it comes down to is that your thought, some people might say, well, these guys are so good, they can do anything. And maybe that's true. But boy, I don't like it. And that's a league-wide problem. It's not just the Eagles. It's a league-wide problem. It's like, and that's why I brought up Tampa Bay, blowing out 12 coaches. What are the odds that Todd Bowles survives that? Who's a good coach, not a great coach, but what now he's got to bring in 12 new people? and go win a division and go compete. But this whole industry is backward in so many ways. So many ways. It's like, well, their shelf life is over. I mean, what are the odds? Nobody cares about Jason Michael. I get it. What are the odds that Ryan Mahaffey's a better tight ends coach than Jason Michael? Bizarre to me. Bizarre.
Interesting stuff here. Chris Cooper has landed as the new Eagles offensive line coach, which means they've kind of split the roles, guys, of Jeff Stoutland. I'm sure you've noticed this. So kind of a split role now in Stoutland. Mahaffey's going to be the tight ends coach and the run game coordinator. That's Ryan Mahaffey, 38-year-old hire out of Green Bay. And then you have Chris Cooper now, who will be the offensive line coach. And I think it ends there. He'll be the O-line coach. That's it. John, seems to me, and I don't want to be too hard on Chris Cooper this morning, but I will be a little hard on him. Seems to me like a downgrade. I mean, I think you're going to downgrade from anybody with Jeff Stoutland, but this seems like a clear he doesn't really have that much success.
Well, from a resume standpoint, you're right. It's a downgrade. But again, I think you're looking at it wrong, and I think most people are looking at it wrong. Like, they're changing philosophies, and this guy has experience in the philosophy, and the other guy doesn't want to run the philosophy.
Just experience, though, not necessarily success.
No, but again, I think that has more to do with the personnel.
Right. Okay.
So, yeah, I mean, it's just come hell or high water. I mean, I guess the positive is to everyone who wants change, you're getting change, man.
Oh, we're getting change to the next degree, John. We're getting big change here.
So what are the odds the next 5 years are as successful as the last 5 years? I don't like those odds.
No, I don't either, really. Good stuff there, John. Good opening segment here on Chris Cooper. All right, the O-line coach has officially been replaced. Jeff Stoutland is out, and we will see what ends up happening with Jeff Stoutland, if he coaches somewhere else this year or if he stays on the Eagles staff. I don't think he would do that, John. Have you heard anything more about that?
He's definitely not staying here. No.
You know how they release it, though. Oh, well, he's been given an option. You know what I mean? He can stay in Philly. He's just not going to be. They do the same thing with Petula. They don't fire these guys. I don't.
Well, he could definitely stay in Philly if he wants. His wife loves it here, so I know that. It's one of the reasons he stayed as long as he has. But, and he look. Hopefully, yeah. There's already talk that he might go to the Jets with Frank Reich. We'll see if that shakes out. If he does want to take a year off, hopefully I think, he's upset more than the team's upset. So I think from that standpoint, hopefully it'll calm down and if he wants to, they'll open the building for him and say, just like Kelsey or anybody can stop by and hang out at a training camp and all that. And if he doesn't want to coach, hopefully they get to that point. Just be a friend of the program, so to speak. I think that's possible. But that's, to me, the bigger isn't about the people. It's about why the Eagles are doing what they're doing.
They believe, I guess, it's the best way forward. We will find out if they are right about that. The offense has been ugly, and I think we've all talked about it ad nauseum. So there we are getting as
the running game hasn't typically. This year it was. So I mean, and it
wasn't as bad as we thought it was this year. I know it wasn't like obviously historic like the year prior, but weren't they a top 10 running team like by most metrics?
Well, they were better than people thought they were. And they got, by the way, ironically, they got better when Nick stepped in and ordered the changes. They got better. Obviously, still not as up to, but over the long haul, they've been very successful in the running game. So to me, this part of it's different. Now, to be fair to them, you can't just say, "Oh, well, we'll stick with our same running game and we want to run, Shanahan, McVay." That's part of it. You set up. You don't set up what they want to do passing without doing what they do running, and vice versa. So you can't just piecemeal it. So obviously, the passing game is deemed more important. And it was ugly, and that is ugly, and it has been ugly for a long time. So this is sort of the unintended consequence of that.
We will find out how it goes. John, if I ask you to do this might be hard to do, I guess, this early in the offseason, but do you have an idea of what you think a ceiling and a floor would be for this new Eagles offense? I mean, I know we talk about the unknown and will they be able – do they have the personnel to run it? Do they have the quarterback to run it? Do they have all these different things to run it? What's the ceiling on this thing? Could they explode and become the greatest show on turf part two? I'm exaggerating. I'm embellishing, obviously.
Well, definitely not.
No, I'm just saying, what is, in your eyes, what is the ceiling and the floor if you have it right now? And I understand this can change based on personnel changes that happen in the ensuing months.
Yeah, the ceiling is, I think you've seen the ceiling is like, a 2022 level of production. That's probably the ceiling. Different style, but that's the ceiling. And then the floor is probably much lower than it typically has been with this team over this stretch, because there's a lot of moving parts here that could go drastically wrong. So I think the floor is, there's an opportunity to take the elevator down to the basement. And I think the ceiling is still pretty high if everybody comes back and everybody's healthy, and you still have a lot of good players. So I still think the ceiling is high, but the floor is much lower than it has typically been with what's going on.
Going to be interesting to see how it plays out. I want to thank everybody for being here today. Good segment one. Chris Cooper is in. All right, as Eagles offensive line coach. We do have some good topics today that we're going to get to. All right, you're going to start to look at this offseason a little deeper. We got NFL draft talk. We got some free agency talk. We got some potential contracts. We got some potential trade market players, and not the ones you think. I mean, everybody can talk about the A.J. Brown trade potential right now. I got some other names I want to hit with you guys on that. John, the first thing I want to talk about in segment number 2 here is in the same area. All right, we now have Chris Cooper. And one of the things I think many fans are ready for or even expecting is drafting of offensive linemen high up in the draft. Okay, so you're going to have potentially Cooper's first class. Now, I understand Cooper's not going to be making the picks. Doesn't have, that much pedigree in the building. But it will be his first, developmental guy to work with, or draft pick guy to work with. If I'm not mistaken, John, Stoutland's very first offensive lineman was Lane Johnson, I believe. So that turned out to be pretty good. What does the O-line draft board look like now? And do you think this changes how Howie would approach drafting offensive linemen early?
Yeah, I think it will. I know already so many people have jumped to Caden Proctor at 23 for the Eagles. I think, if he's there, but I think that mindset might have to change because that seems like a player that would fit the old scheme. And I think you might have to start drafting a different style of offensive lineman as you move forward. Now, to say Stoutland's first pick was, first developmental process with Lane, he was the 4th pick in the draft. The Eagles stunk at the time, and that's a big time prospect. Now, Lane will tell you, look at his film in his rookie season, it was terrible, and Stoutland, really developed him. So he does deserve credit. But let's also say that, the crown jewel of Jeff Stoutland is Jordan Mailata. not Lane Johnson. Lane Johnson
Yeah,
might
Lane
be
was, I was a big prospect.
Yeah, might be the most athletic big man ever, playing right tackle in the NFL. So a lot of physical gifts that Lane Johnson has, and so does Jordan, but different. Obviously, never played football and all that kind of stuff. I think you're already started, with Miles Hinton and Cam Williams and Drew Kendall and Willie Lampkin. Those two guys, Drew Kendall and Willie Lampkin, are already here. Those two guys, to me, seem like potential fits for the new scheme. If they can develop them, but that's easier said than done. I think Miles Hinton and Cameron Williams are young enough to, not be beholden to what they've learned for a decade. So I don't think, those guys right off the bat. Now, they're not Lane Johnson level prospects. You got 3 day 3 picks, and Willie Lampkin was undrafted. But, to me, those will be like interesting players to look to see the difference and can they get them going, and develop them. And can Chris Cooper do that? Again, his history in Minnesota is mixed. I mentioned some of the guys he wasn't able to develop that are higher prospects, second round picks, first round picks. So that to me will, tell the story. Can they get guys like that up to speed? But as far as drafting goes, yeah, I mean, in theory, you got to draft a different style of offensive linemen. And that may start this year. It may not. I'm sure they'll draft an offensive lineman somewhere along the line.
And what's your gut right now? And for like first round of an alignment, will it be round 1, round 2, round 3? I'm sure it'll be a premium pick, but I'm not sure which.
Well, they'll definitely take one on the first 2 days of the draft. Like Spencer Fano to me would be the new guy. Like he would be the home run hit for the new scheme. The kid from Utah. But from everything I see, he's going to be a top 10 pick. So he's out of the equation. Proctor, I'm just looking at Proctor. He's 6'7", 366. That's what they list him as. I mean, you want him running off the ball at an angle?
Yeah, no. He is very, very athletic, but yeah, I agree with you. He's more built for the Mauler style.
So, the other Utah has 2 tackles, Spencer Fanu and Caleb Lomu. Maybe he's more of the Monroe Freeling from Georgia. I don't know. These are the top tackles, but because there's been so much hype on Caden Proctor, I'm like, oh, how does he fit now? I just don't see it. He might be athletic for 360 pounds, but do you want to waste a player like that with a bunch of reach blocks? Yeah. I don't know.
It's a good point by you. I don't know that that's going to be the case. We will find out what they end up doing. I think it could be second round, John. Honestly, I don't know if it'll be a first round because, you only get one first round pick, obviously. And this team is probably going to try and I don't know what's the part. It's interesting. Like I look at them like edge if they don't sign Jalen Phillips. Offensive linemen, if they don't feel great about Landon or Lane or or some of these guys, they could go a lot of different ways. You could even make an argument.
Wide receiver, if they get rid of AJ, right? Yeah, right. I mean, there's a lot of things, and that's why it's an exercise in futility until free agency comes and you see what the plan is, or at least you can framework. All right, they got a wide receiver. Maybe they get a player maybe Jalen Phillips is back and you take edge off the table. So yeah, I mean, right now we're flying blind, as they say. When free agency, you at least get the framework of the plan they have, and you can whittle it down to certain things that they would be looking for. Not that the Eagles are a need-based drafting team, but need is the worst talent evaluator in sports. But again, you can say, take the best player. But if you have a quarterback, for instance, you don't take a quarterback. I mean, there's some context to that.
There is some nuance, right?
Yeah. So you get a better feel after free agency.
Good stuff there, Johnny Mac. John, continuing to look at this first round. I think we stay there for a little bit, talk about what could come in this and really the first couple rounds. It's not only limited to the first round, but you can see that the variance in what people are looking for. You see, where's that comment? I just saw somebody commented. Cornerback, safety, tight end, wide receiver. I mean, you got offensive linemen. You got all these different positions, cornerback too, all these different spots, John, where the Eagles could end up going. I think edge is going to be a bigger priority than them because I'm not sure if they think Nolan Smith is a long-term player just yet. And then obviously Jalen Phillips is out there. And if Jalen Phillips is going to get $25 million from somebody in the open market, my guess would be he's not back in Philly. And then you're back to where you started pre-Jalen Phillips trade, John, with Nolan Smith and Jalen Hunt, both more developed players at that point, but probably still not enough to anchor your edge rushing group. It feels to me like they'd go edge if they're not able to get Jalen Phillips back. And obviously you'll know by that point because free agency is before the draft.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, edge is on the top of the list if they don't get Jalen Phillips back. You saw what they did last year now in hindsight to try to get an edge rusher. I mean, they were trying the entire time, come hell or high water, to get a big time edge rusher. And if, I don't want to compare Jalen Phillips to Micah Parsons or Myles Garrett, but he's a good player. And if you don't have him, you got to get another good player. And the easiest way to do that would be in the draft without spending $35 million. Because I'm not a Crosby to the Eagles guy.
No, me neither.
I don't think he reaches the level of Micah or Miles to where they'll move mountains to bring in a player like that.
Yeah.
Good player. I'm not, but he's just different level.
It was a pretty strong story yesterday we talked about with Jaylen Carter being offered potentially for Micah Parsons. Some people were commenting, it's bullshit. We bought the BS from Micah Parsons. He's lying. I don't know if it is or it
These
isn't.
people, I mean, why? Like, why is it so hard for you to believe?
Well, I mean, it does come from Micah. It didn't come from, reputable.
Well, it's not that point. It's but the point in general. Like when all this stuff comes out and it eventually comes out, and it's true 90% of the time. Like I said, I just wrote about this on Sports Illustrated. The Shane stuff with Saquon Barkley, the Joe Shane stuff. Like that's why people they do not want people hearing their conversations because they talk about everybody. Everybody. So all your favorite players, that's their jobs. That's what that's all they do. Is talk about, well, he's not what he once was. Maybe we can do this. Maybe we can do that. Should we think about moving? All these conversations, which could be by a fan base perspective, could be described as disrespectful, is business as usual in any NFL building. So whomever your favorite player is, they get talked about. Because this league moves quickly, very, very quickly. And by that, I mean players ascend and they descend, and there's no stasis where there's very few players who are untouchable. And if you can get Micah Parsons, there's even fewer that are untouchable.
It's true. All right, if we assume for a second that Micah is right and they offered Jaylen Carter to get him, I'm not sure if you've done any digging to see if that's true or not. If we assume that is correct, In theory, would the Eagles be open to trading Jaylen Carter?
No, because that's the thing. Yes, for Micah Parsons. No,
right. Only for a player like that.
Yeah, no, in a typical fashion. And was it correct? Yes and no. It was correct. And if they could have got the guy, they would have moved Jaylen Carter. No, because it was never in the equation. The Cowboys weren't fucking trading him to the Eagles. So it depends how you frame it.
Right.
Well, yes, they would have traded him to get Micah Parsons. It's not an insult. It's not disrespectful. It's one of the things that drives me nuts. Pet peeve.
Well, I think people have put the cart before the horse. Me included, guilty as charged on Jaylen Carter. I mean, I think we think about him like he's the best defensive tackle in football, and he has the potential to be, but he hasn't necessarily reached that just yet.
No, he has not. Yeah. He has the potential. He's the most. He's the most talented. Is I think the best way to describe it. Or he's in the conversation. He's in a very small conversation of being the most talented defensive tackle in football. But no, he's not performed at that level. He got close. He was top 5 in 2024, and then just the injuries. Kind of he did not play well last year.
But I think he's kind of looming this summer, though, John. That's why I think it's a relevant conversation. I mean, if they were willing to trade him for Micah, I understand your point about you trading.
There's two players. There's 2 players they're willing to trade him for: Myles Garrett and Micah Parsons. And Micah's off the board now. So is Myles Garrett going to be about? They'll trade the building for Myles Garrett. Is he going to force his way out? I don't know. Jim Schwartz is gone. I know he liked Jim, and who knows where Myles is. But
what did Jim do? I thought did Jim do a new deal with them or what?
No, he resigned.
Jim Schwartz, did he?
Yeah. So he's not coming back. So that could affect Myles Garrett, and you'll get more. You'll know pretty quickly, as I said, the combines at the end of the month, and that's when everybody starts talking, agents and executives, and it'll be very clear if Myles wants out of Cleveland, and then you're going to hear all the Myles, and be prepared for all your favorites because they will trade the building for Myles Garrett.
Yeah, no doubt about that. We will see what ends up happening. John, back to the draft real quick. Where do you think they would draft an edge rusher if they sign Jalen Phillips? Is it off the board completely, you think? Because then they're probably pretty good at that spot, right?
Yeah, I mean, if they sign Jalen Phillips, they're not getting Myles Garrett. Yeah, I mean, now obviously everything has a butterfly effect. Did they think they have an opportunity to get Myles Garrett? They might know he's not on the trading block. Andrew Berry's consistently said he's not trading him. They signed him to a new deal. So it's very difficult. It would have to be the player being, so headstrong that I'm just not going to play for this team anymore. And then at some point you got to do something. That's a very small path. So yeah, I think the Eagles are operating with, they got to get Jalen Phillips back in the mold, but he's the one guy in free agency that's young, that's ascending, and who could break the bank. And I'm sure they're going to have a walkaway number, so to speak. But if you lose him, then you got to get somebody else to replace him.
Any idea what you think the walkaway number would be? I know I've set mine at 20. Yours is a little higher than mine is. Where do you think the Eagles would be?
Well, I think, these contract projections are you got to see where the market is first. Obviously, the cap is going up from 279 to 304-ish, 5-ish, somewhere in that range. So all these people justifying their contract projections on last year are not taking that into effect. So by and large, the cap goes up, the contracts go up. He's got an injury history. I would say hopefully from the Eagles' perspective, that'll press down the market a little bit. However,
significant injuries. I mean, Achilles and an ACL and back-to-back.
Yeah, but he looked pretty good last year.
Yeah, I know. Landon Dickerson looked pretty good for a year, 2 years. He's banged up.
Well, I don't think those injuries, especially in the modern era, are considered terribly, like Landon's got degenerative issues that I think
they're very different positions.
Yeah.
It's not a great comp, I understand.
Whereas, Jalen Phillips looked pretty good. He looked healthy. So are people going to believe their eyes, or are they going to be scared? You factor that into it. There's a lot of bad teams in the NFL, but there's a lot of bad teams from the perspective of, all right, this is the 26-year-old edge rusher on the market. He's going to be 27. That's really the sweet spot of free agency. Those are the guys you pay. So that's my concern, is somebody will look at it and say, well, this is the guy. You don't want to pay the 30-year-old. You don't want to pay Trey Hendrickson. I'm sure somebody will. But it'll depend on the market. And if the market is, and the Eagles are very disciplined when it comes to that stuff. But I have a feeling he's going to be this year's Zach Bond, and that he's the number one priority, and they're going to get him done. Because I think he also knows that he's never played better. He's never played better than he played with Vic in Miami and when he got here. I think he's very cognizant of that as well.
We'll see. You said Zach Bond there. Did you mean Phillips?
No, last year Zach Bond was.
He's this year. Okay, gotcha. Yeah. In here. All right, good stuff there, John. Who's the number one, free agency move that would change their draft plans completely? It might be Phillips. I also look at Goddard. Like, if they don't get Goddard under contract, I mean, they don't have a tight end, John. They don't have a freaking tight end. They got to get somebody. So now they're going to get somebody somewhere, but. Will they draft a second-round pick, first-round pick? I think that seems a little rich for me, but we'll see what they end up doing. That could be a big one. Reed Blankenship, John. If Reed Blankenship goes, how important is safety? Jalen Phillips, we just talked at length about him and the edge rusher room. Those to me are the big three. And then obviously Nakobe Dean, but you're more positioned at linebacker already because of Jahad Campbell and Zach Bond. So, but how do you see that element and how some of those signings could impact what they do?
Well, I think the biggest one is not free agency, but it's all intertwined, and that's obviously AJ, what they decide to do as far as are they going to move on. I think if they move on, that drastically changes your whole philosophy in the offseason. Not that you can replace them, but you need to. I mean, everybody's going to be replaced. You're not going to replace them at that level, but you need something that is approaching competency. And that would ramp up significantly at wide receiver if that happens. So that to me is by far the number one stone to fall in the new league year. What are the Eagles going to do? Can they work it out? Is he just going to be like, yeah, I don't want any part of this? So I think everything else pales in comparison. Dallas Goedert, I don't expect him to be back. He's going to be 32 years old. He took a $4 million pay cut. I don't think he wants to be back. I think that pissed him off. This will be his last chance to probably get a 2-year deal with somewhat significant money. He's coming off a career year from a touchdown standpoint, and he scored a shitload of touchdowns, and that kind of stuff gets you paid because there's a bunch of shitty GMs in this league who aren't looking at the blocking tape. And then he just had a really bad year from the blocking aspect, which obviously is going to be a key part of this team moving forward to get the run game going again. So I don't even think he's going to be back. So yeah, they're going to have to get a tight end somewhere, whether that's in free agency or that's in the draft. I find it hard to believe they take a tight end in the first round. There's one, the kid from Oregon, that could go. I don't even think he'll reach the Eagles. But yeah, they're going to have to find a tight end somewhere.
Not a whole lot of free agent tight ends. I mean, you have Goddard, you have David Njoku.
Well, you remember you have the trade market. People have been talking about Michael Mayer coming here for years. There's a lot of different.
Kyle Pitts will be on the open market.
Too expensive, way too expensive.
And he doesn't fit. I'm just saying. I'm just throwing the name out there just to see like what he would get. You know,
and he's a Philly kid, so people get excited by that.
Kylan Granson's a free agent.
Yeah, they're all free agents. Grant's a free agent. Collins a free agent.
Yeah, they're all free agents.
Dallas is a free agent. They might bring one of them back. 1-year deal type of deal. Veteran minimum. Not Dallas. Dallas is going to get a decent contract, and I think he's going to move on. And Reed, I think, will be the easiest one to get back. Because he didn't have a great year. He's not going to get overpaid. The Eagles love him.
How about Isaiah Likely? Free agent, Baltimore, 25.
Yeah, he's a good player. He's a good player. I don't know why Baltimore would leave him out of the building. A lot of these guys aren't even going to get the free agency. That's another thing people don't realize.
Yeah,
so,
right.
And I don't think, he's a guy that I don't think they'll let out of their building, but I don't cover the Ravens every day, but he's a good player. I just don't think he'll be available. But they did pay Mark Andrews a lot. So maybe they don't want to pay two tight ends like that.
Yeah, it's true.
So there's a lot of things that can
I would say
factor in.
likely is unlikely. Good one, Drozone. Well done.
There's a lot of things that factor into it in every city. So, before, like the really, really top guys who are going to get franchised, like Dallas already talking about franchising Pickens. They're such a bad organization.
They really are. All right. My next segment, we'll get some people going. It'll be good. I'm excited to talk about it. We'll bring up that name in a second. Let's go to Brian Fleming. What's up, Fleming? Appreciate the super chat today. Brian says, so they claim Stout is staying with the team doing something, but from what's being reported, he told knee pad Nick to F off. Any update on that?
There's no claim that Stoutland is staying with the team, number one. I don't know where you guys get this stuff.
Didn't it sound like that when he first left? That he's
they wanted they said they said they wanted him back to be the offensive line coach, number one, not the run game coordinator. So he could have come back, and the thought was that he'd take a year off from coaching, and if he does, he's welcome around the building. That's basically it. That was basically it. But nobody said he's going to be part of the organization. They said he is welcome to be part of the organization because of all he's done for the Eagles over the years, which is, that's should be self-explanatory. But the question is, does he want to coach somewhere else? As I said already, some people have brought up Frank Reich with the Jets, and I that might be speculation more than anything else. You know how the people collect it. Oh, Frank Reich's with the Jets. Maybe he can go there. So, To me, that's all speculation. If he wants to coach, I'm sure he'll have the opportunity. But remember how late this is. Everybody's got an offensive line coach. The Eagles are one of the last ones to have to hire an offensive line coach. So it's almost.
Have the Giants hired an offensive line coach yet?
Let's see. It's tough to get these lists, but I can get them. These offensive line. I mean, there's a couple open spots. I know that. I expect Jason Michael to end up somewhere as a tight ends coach, but I think I looked at that the other day and there were 2 open spots around the league. So it's kind of tough at this part, almost every, but you have Las Vegas, obviously, have to build up a staff. So I don't know where they are, but all right, here we go. NFL offensive line coaches. So the Raiders are vacant. And that's it. So somebody would have to fire somebody.
That's it. The only vacant O-line spot is the Raiders.
Yeah, the Jets already have an offensive line coach, Steve Hyden. Now you can do the senior offensive assistant, like Minnesota. They hired Frank.
There's the ways to make roles in the NFL.
Yeah, Minnesota hired Frank Smith as the assistant head coach, the guy the Eagles interviewed to be the offensive coordinator, who was the offensive coordinator in Miami, who's really the offensive line coach. But they have an offensive line coach to replace Chris Cooper. But the real offensive line coach is Frank Smith, if that makes sense. So there are ways you can get around it. But right now, as we speak, 31 of the 32 teams have offensive line coaches.
Yeah, that's interesting. We'll see what ends up happening there. Fleming, thanks for the super chat, brother. Here's our boy HKP. HKP, thank you, brother. This is no Temu thrift store stupor. I'm actually going to start calling the $2 supers the Temu supers. I can't even buy anything on Temu with this. Come on, man. HKP, thanks for the $20 super chat. He says, so basically another Temu thrift store offseason, question mark?
No, I don't think it'll be as I don't think they're going to go crazy because they don't have the space for that. And again, AJ means so much because he changes everything from a cap standpoint as well if you have to move on from them. So that makes you almost by necessity to be less aggressive. But I don't think it'll be quite as bad as last year, but it's not going to be over the top. And if it is, it's going to be more trades, I would say, than anything else.
Well, where do you see him spending significant money this offseason?
Well, it depends who,
Like there is a chance it's Temu, right? I mean, if they let Goddard walk,
last
they
season,
bring AJ back, they're not going to shell out any more money there.
I don't think they didn't sign their highest allocation in free agency last year was Azeez Ojulari at $3.5 million. I do not think it'll be like that.
Yeah, no, it can't be.
You'll have one or two big, and again, it might be the trade market. It might be
Jalen Phillips is what it might be.
Well, yeah, internal, and the Eagles would say, well, we signed Zach Bond. Yeah, I'm not talking about the internal stuff of the last year, but that is a part of it, and it will drive Howie crazy if you don't add it into the equation. But my presumption is you're talking about outside people, not inside people. But last year they signed some inside people. Zach being the most notable. So, yeah, that's always part of the equation. But it's like the Phillies when they bring back, what's his face? I'm drawing, the home run guy. Why can't I think of his name?
Schwarber?
Yeah, Schwarber. Thank you. and everybody's like, well, they haven't done anything. And they're like, well, we paid this guy 50 something million.
Yeah, right.
But it's like nobody, if you have it, nobody looks at it as an allocation.
Right.
But it's a big freaking allegation.
Yeah, well, we'll see what they end up doing. HKP, thanks for the $20 super brother. Appreciate you, man, for being here. Here's Pumper. Nothing like a Pumper super chat. He's changed the profile picture again. Fellas, so how are we going to spin this Cooper Cup hire? Brian Pumper is not falling for the banana in the tailpipe. Watched too much football, SMH.
Well, if you watch too much football, you should know that you shouldn't be worried about coaches as much as you are. That's how I would frame it. The whole league gives off this, as I brought up with Tampa Bay, the whole league gives off this hint every year. Like, we just rotate guys. Minnesota doesn't want them, we'll bring them in. I wouldn't be surprised because Minnesota lost their tight ends coach to be the offensive coordinator. Where did he go? I forget where. Pittsburgh. He got the offensive coordinator job. I wouldn't be surprised if they bring in Jason Michael because they're one of the 2 or 3 teams looking for a tight ends coach.
Right.
They just, all right, we don't want them, you take them. We don't want them, you take them. It's the whole league. They do this shit every year. Why
don't the Eagles give more information? Like, are they gone or not? Is Scott Loeffler gone or not? I know we think he's gone because he's going to be gone, but is Jason Michael gone or not? They haven't announced that, but they hired a tight ends coach.
Are they gone officially? No. Are they gone? Yes. Yes. I mean, because people don't want to say it. Like, the easiest thing is, with expiring contracts, as we said, and you just don't want the guy back and you let him walk. That's the easiest way in the coaching world. But, you don't want to announce they're fired so they can go get another job. And it's, sort of a courtesy. But, yeah, Scott Loeffler's not coming back for all the Loeffler people.
No.
Jason's not coming back. Now, Kevin's a little bit weird because he might come back in an administrative role. But I assume he'll get some kind of senior offensive position somewhere. And then that'll shake out at some point. But like, it is. Here are the names: Pat Meyer, Zach Yinzer, Doug Marone, Steve Hayden, Scott Peters, George Warhop, Cole Popovich. I thought he coached basketball. Shane Sarrett, Justin Fry. Any of you guys register these names? These are NFL offensive line coaches. It's like, it's the fucking players, man.
Fair enough.
Chris Cooper will be better than he was in Minnesota because he'll have better players here.
Now, assuming the players get back healthy because they weren't so great last year, but we will see. All right, we will see what ends up happening. All right, good stuff, everybody. Appreciate all you guys being here today. Hit the like button on the show. Drop your comments down below. We appreciate all of them. Super chats go to the top, so we will hit your super chats. John, I want to talk about an unlikely name this morning. Anybody want to take a guess at who I want to talk about? John, you want to take a stab at who I want to talk about?
Jahan Dotson.
Oh, wow. What a good one, man. That is my next one. That is not this one, but that is my very next one. Literally, I have it written down. Wide receiver 3, Jahan Dotson next. So close. Good guess. I want to talk about a little bit of Tanner McKee, Johnny Mac, and not for the reasons that people think I want to talk. We'll speculate of why I want to talk about him. I do think they're in an interesting spot with Tanner McKee. He's got 1 year left on his contract. He's a backup quarterback, and there is a lot of quarterback-needy teams around the league. Do you think the Eagles will look to trade Tanner and rely on either Sam Howell or Kyle McCord, who I don't think is ready to be the backup, but maybe Sam Howell is? Will they look to trade Tanner McKee? What do you think that market looks like? Our buddy Benjamin Solak was on ESPN talking about he could see them flipping Tanner McKee to a team like Miami for a mid-round pick. Something like that. Do you think that's likely or could happen this offseason? And if not, what do you? I don't think it'll be an extension for Tanner McKee to be the backup. Will they just go into kind of his lame duck year and let him walk after next season? How do you see the Tanner McKee stuff playing out this summer?
Yeah, he'll be back and he'll be the backup. Kyle McCord's not even here anymore. He's in Green Bay.
Sam no, he was here through the end of the year, wasn't he?
Yeah, he was.
All right, so he left now. Sorry, guys.
He was, on the practice squad. So you have to sign those guys to futures contracts, which you can, but he went in a different direction and went to Green Bay. So he's gone. Sam Howell's a free agent. So, he's not – I don't expect him to be back. Tanner will be the backup. They got one more year, cost-effective backup. They like him. I don't think, his Week 18 game this year helped him. I don't think anybody's going to go into a season saying, hey, we're going to lean on Tanner McKee.
He dropped him in with all backups.
Well, look, I know people want to pump him up and get a second-round pick for him or whatever. You ain't getting a second-round pick for Tanner McKee. But understand these quarterback-needy teams, they have to sell their quarterback to their fan base. You can't sell Tanner McKee as a starting quarterback.
Oh, sure you can. You just get some fringe Eagle fans to represent him. They'll gas him up.
You're going to see some of these. Now, it'll be if they do trade him, which they don't have a backup, so I don't see any way they're going to trade him. It would be for a day 3 pick, number 1. So, maybe he can get a 4 with conditional if he plays to get a 3, maybe something like that. But why would they trade him? They don't have a backup quarterback if they trade him. And that's a position they value and they like him. And they don't want to spend a lot for the back. If you have to go out and replace him, because remember, if you trade him, you got to replace him. And then if you got to go with a veteran, those guys are pretty expensive. The veteran backup quarterbacks,
$7 million. Yeah, they're not cheap.
So no, I think he'll be back and he'll play out. And I don't consider guys playing out their rookie deals lame ducks. I mean, that's not like a coach or anything. I mean, it's the end of his rookie deal, and he'll go into free agency, and if people think he has a chance to compete, maybe somebody gives him a nice little deal and you got to move on. But they got one more year of it, and I think they're going to take advantage of it.
How well do you think Tanner fits with the new offense and what they're trying to build there? Now, I've always been interested by how different the quarterback styles are in Philly. Like you used to see, and this is just one example, but when Snoop Huntley was the backup for Lamar, it's like, okay, yeah, they play the same style of ball, The Eagles is like they have Jalen Hurts on one hand, and then their backup quarterback is always nothing like Jalen Hurts, which I find to be a little interesting.
Yeah, well, there's 2 ways to think about it. You try to get somebody similar traits-wise, and then you don't have to change the offense that much. I think the Eagles have always been secretly happy if they have to change the offense a little bit, at least from the standpoint of being rejuvenated. And maybe that's wrong. People take that the wrong way, but they take it as a nice little challenge. So I don't think there's one way of doing it or that's correct or the otherwise. But in theory, he'll
Doesn't
get
that make it harder on the players though? Like just in theory, you lose last year. They lost not the past season, 2 seasons ago. They lost Jalen in the second Commander game after I don't know what it was, 10 plays or something. Instead of just continuing with the game plan or continuing with the modified version of the game plan, but playing the same offense, new quarterback comes in. It's like a completely different looking game, Does that mess up?
Yeah, but I mean, do you want a completely shitty quarterback just because he's athletic and he can't do anything, or do you want somebody who can at least run to an offense to an acceptable level? So it's not easy to find guys who can duplicate what Jalen Hurts can do. It's easier to find guys who can do what Tanner McKee does. It's one of the reasons we talk about why isn't he so high on top 10 list. Why does everybody disrespect Jalen Hurts? Yada, yada, yada. Well, execs know it's easier to find a different style of quarterback. So that plays a factor into it. But with Tanner, yeah, I mean, in theory, again, this is all theory. He hasn't played enough. In theory, the ball comes out quicker. There's more anticipation. In theory, he would be more of a fit for this offense. But it's all theory. There's no people have really pumped up Tanner McKee in their minds. I blame Pumper for that. The guy's thrown 88 passes in the
Pump. Holy moly, you're getting some credit this morning, Pump. I think Pump would wear that as a badge of honor.
There's thrown, at least in this chat, he's thrown 88 passes in the NFL. He's got 2 starts. He's played, good in one half, and then sort of just and 3, the other 6 quarters. But I think he's a good backup. Can you win a game or two if you lose your starter for a couple weeks for a sprained ankle? Yeah, I think you can.
Yeah, me too. I like Tanner.
And that's all you want from a backup quarterback.
I think Tanner's better than people. I think people have now gone the other way on Tanner because of week 18. They lined him up with a bunch of.
Well, it's hard. You're right.
I mean, seriously though, Jalen Hurts is one of the better quarterbacks in football and a very successful quarterback. If Jalen Hurts rolled out there with the entire set of backups, what would everybody's expectation be? I don't think it'd be that good, John. And I don't think it have anything to do with Jalen.
I say it all the time. He's not going to be playing with any backups. Not going to be playing with the backups. They're going to be playing, if they're forced to play, with the starters. But it works both ways. In week 18 the year prior, everybody's like, this guy's going to get a 2nd round pick. And I said, well, pump the brakes. It's not. So it works both ways. Yes, he shouldn't be criticized that dramatically for not looking that great last year. But the year prior, these people shouldn't have pumped him up like he was going to get to some city and they're going to dub Tanner McKee their starting quarterback. It works both ways. So he is what he is. He's a good backup quarterback. And the Eagles have one more year at a cost-effective rate, and I think they're going to take advantage of it.
What do you think it would take for Howie to move him?
2nd round pick.
2nd rounder? Okay, that's high. I don't think
Howie wants that's the joke around the league. Hey, buddy, 2nd round pick.
Yeah, right. Right.
If there is some lunatic team out, and by the way, there's some.
But the 3rd, get it done. If somebody calls, I'll give you Howie. I'm not giving you a 2. I'm giving you a 3, dude.
I don't think a 3rd gets it done because they don't have a backup. And if they have to go get a backup, they're going to have to spend money.
It gives Howie a nice excuse to draft a quarterback early.
Nice. Well, that's another thing. If they if they draft a quarterback, that changes everything. And
I'm saying though, they might care about the optics of drafting a quarterback. We'll trade him McKee, make that easier.
Well, you're not going to trade them until after you get a quarterback. They're not going to go in and say we're drafting a quarterback.
The big draft night trade, everybody. The draft night trade this year. A couple years ago, it was for AJ Brown. Now it's for the guy getting rid of Tanner McKee. Oh wow!
Look, if there's some bad team, bad organization that wants to give up a 2nd round pick, I think he do that in a second. But other than that, I think they value that he's cost effective and he's a good backup. Why would you get rid of him? I think that's the mentality.
Yeah, I agree with you. Here's Pump checking in, the leader of the Tannerites. Pump says, provide some damn context, J-Mac. Tanner was throwing to Britton, effing Covey, and Grant Calcaterra. What the F is going on here? Hurts is the Avengers.
What? It's funny, the guy who offers all the context. What was your context the year prior when you're throwing the backups and you look good, and you turned him into a starting quarterback in the NFL? Works both ways.
Come on, punk. Johnny Mac just took you to the woodshed. Not your buddy guy checks in. What's up, brother? Appreciate your comment. If you meant to put a comment on this super chat, just drop it down below. You don't have to super chat it again, and I'll answer your comment. Thanks for the $5, brother. Appreciate it. That's not your buddy guy. I think that's how you say that. Good name there. All right, so Tanner McKee will be back, John. That's what you think?
Yeah.
I was hoping maybe we'd pick up a nice second or third rounder for Tanner.
Goodness. If you're getting, well, they won't move him if you can get a second rounder. I look. There's a lot of like, which team are you looking at? Nobody's bringing him in to be a starter.
All right, here's my question. If you're the Raiders, would you rather draft Fernando Mendoza #1, or would you rather
come on
trade a third for?
Look, I'm not even a Mendoza fan, but come on.
You've been criticizing Mendoza. Now you're going to use the #1 overall pick on him?
No, I'm not, but they are.
All right. Well, that's what I'm saying.
That's not that. When I say teams talk about everybody, yeah, and Las Vegas obviously, has two Eagles executives, Anthony Patch and Brandon Hunt.
That's right. Yeah.
You
telling me Anthony Patch doesn't know the greatness of Tanner McKee?
Yeah, he knows they're going to lose their jobs really quickly if they pass over Fernando Mendoza for Tanner McKee.
Maybe Tom Brady's.
But I would not take Fernando Mendoza #1. But I would not. I would.
Tanner's worth a first-round pick. If you don't like the #1 overall.
Well, pick, if my option is, and I don't even like this option, believe me, and my option, because you understand, especially in a place like Las Vegas, you probably have a 2 or a 3 year window. And that window actually increases if you draft a kid #1, because you could at least say, well, he needs time to develop. Even if it goes pretty shitty, you'll get a couple years out of it. If you go into that situation and go, I'm going to pass on Fernando Mendoza and I'm going to go with Tanner McKee as my starting quarterback and draft.
Oh, that's a bad look.
That is a quick.
Boy, you might get fired before the season starts.
You better be right. You better be right.
Oh man, that's funny.
Because and who I'm trying to think who would be the #1 overall pick if you don't take the quarterback. And it's not a great draft. There's nobody that you say, wow, I'm taking that guy. So of course the Raiders, bad luck. Ruben Bain I'd love, but he's got some traits issues.
Yeah. Try not to buy too much into that, the short arm thing. But
but you're not taking him #1.
No, but he's going to be. I think he'll be a top 5, top 7 pick, probably top 8.
Arvell Reese is a lot of David Bailey's, Caleb Downs. I can't imagine. I think Jeremiah Love's the best player in the draft, but you're not taking a running back #1.
No. Caleb Downs, he'll be a top 10 pick.
Carnell Tate, you're not taking a receiver. It's all Ohio State guys. Sonny
you think the Eagles could try and trade up here? Get a game changer.
Hey man, Howie always trades up. So yeah, in recent years he targets players and goes up to get them.
Yeah, I just wonder what the max would be. Even last year, they thought about they tried to trade up as it was reported. They drafted Jahan at 31, I believe, but they. Or 30.
Yeah, they tried to get up to 22 first.
Yeah, which is pretty significant. So I wonder if this year they're at 23, do they try and get to 14, 15 or somewhere in there maybe?
If somebody they love starts falling past where they think he's going to go, they will go up and get him.
Yeah. Here's a not your buddy guy with the $5 super chat that he didn't put the comment on. Not your buddy. Thanks, buddy. Appreciate it. I called you buddy even though you're telling me in your name you're not my buddy. That's fair. Are they willing to eat the 20.5 in dead cap with Dallas moving on? If so, what do you think of a trade for Kmet?
Yeah, I mean, trade market's a big part of it that nobody thinks of. Good player. I like Kmet, and they have a lot of tight ends in Chicago. Yeah, he'd be I don't know how old he is. He's been I'm gonna look. That's a big part of it. It's interesting because he's a Notre Dame guy. Notre Dame, boy, they generate some tight ends, man. Whew. It's like tight end he's only 26. He'd be the kind of guy the Eagles would want to target. I don't know why Chicago would want to get rid of him other than, like I said, they have a bunch of good tight ends.
Yeah, they did use Kmet though this year. I mean, he liked Kmet, Caleb.
Yeah, he's a good player. And I think he'd be a good fit. Michael Mayer is the one, for the same reason. I don't know why the Raiders would want to get rid of him. Another Notre Dame guy. But a lot of people have speculated on him, the Philly. But yeah, they got to find a tight end, and he's a good player. I would have no issues with, and he's a good blocker too, at least in the modern game. He's more of a two-way tight end who can do both.
Yeah.
Yeah, so he's a good player.
Baked Bisquick says we're getting likely. Let's see. I brought up likely a little earlier in the show. Here's Flexing and Stepping. J-Mac laying the smackdown on Pump with a Timu $1.99 super. Our first Timu super of the
I always love people. Yeah, and he doesn't. Tanner McKee doesn't. You shouldn't shit on him because he is playing with a bunch of backups, but you shouldn't talk him up like he's a superstar when he's playing with a bunch of backups the year prior and against a bunch of backups. That's my only point. And where does that at any level make sense?
Well, do they need as much of a blocking tight end now with the new offense?
Good question. But I would think yes, because if you look at I mean, they have to improve where they were. If you look at
regardless, you're saying regardless of what offense you run, last year wasn't good enough.
No, yeah. I mean, it was a really bad year from a blocking perspective for the tight ends. Now you expect that from Calcaterra. You don't expect that from Dallas Goedert.
Flex, thanks for the super chat, brother. Appreciate everybody being here this morning. All right, good show so far. Couple good segments, 3 good segments so far. We got one here to wrap it up as well, and we will talk about that. We are going to talk about the receivers. We brought it up a little earlier. I don't just want to keep this on A.J. Brown, though, John, for our final segment here. Maybe a little bit more than our final segment. We got some more to go. We got about 36 minutes to play here on Birds 365. I don't just want to keep it focused all on AJ. I know AJ's the number one domino, so we will include him in this conversation. But considering the potential change of the offense, John, you got AJ Brown, you got DeVonta Smith. Jahan Dotson is going to be a free agent, I believe. So do they try and potentially bring him back? I don't know. What do you kind of see as the future of this wide receiver room right now? The wide receiver 3 problem I'd like to start with first because I think everybody's heard a lot of A.J. Brown talk. Everybody, there's a lot of talk we've already had about A.J. Brown. What do you think about wide receiver 3? Do they bring back Jahan Dotson? Do they, look to draft somebody? Do they trade for somebody? Do they, try and find another cheap trade like they did with Dotson? Dotson was, pretty cheap trade that they had, who was a former first rounder and I forget what year with the Commanders. What do you think they do at wide receiver 3, and how much more important is this position in the new offense as opposed to what it was in the other offense that they ran, which didn't really get the wide receiver 3 all that involved?
No, in theory, it should be much more important. So they got to get somebody to play wide receiver 3, and potentially wide receiver 1. Or wide receiver 2, depending.
Which is a tough one. Tough.
Yeah. So obviously, but if you're operating that AJ will be back, so you just need somebody wide. Jahan Dotson will not be back. I don't know what he ran coming out of Penn State, but it was really good because obviously he was like the 16th pick in the draft, so he ran 4.4-ish, and that's how quickly he'll be running out of the building to get more of an opportunity somewhere. And I don't expect him to get a big free agent deal. I expect him to have to, sign a one-year prove-it deal somewhere. But to me, he'll be looking for a bigger opportunity to try to resuscitate his career. So, I mean, you got to get somebody in-house. again, a lot of people excited about Darius Cooper. I don't know if you can count on that. I don't think that's the way to go about it. So, but as I've said pretty clearly, and you've seen it over the past 5 years or so, there's no position where you can find more ready to play contributors in the NFL draft than receiver, just because of how the game is played at the college level. There's a boatload of receivers every year. If you draft correctly, and I'm talking third round, I'm not talking first round.
Right. You don't even need to go premium rounds anymore. Yeah.
You can find a contributor, and I think that's the way the Eagles will go about it. To try and, again, this is in the best case scenario. You gotta have a real plan if you're moving on from AJ Brown. If you're just trying to get a wide receiver 3, I think you can get that in the draft. So so much of this offseason depends on what happens with AJ Brown, because it changes so many things at so many levels. And certainly when you boil it down to one position, and then you go into camp, if you do it, say you draft a wide receiver in the 3rd round, and you say, all right, go compete with Darius Cooper for that job, and then let the best man win.
Right.
And that's a pretty good plan. But there's so many receivers.
Now you mentioned in theory that, the wide receiver 3 should be more important. And I agree with you. I said that as well, where, this offense is different than the other offense. Will it actually though? Is that the game of Jalen and this offense? I know they're going to switch, but
it's a good question. I don't think it is. And other people think I'm a hater. And
well, you're not being a hater. I mean, and John, just, entertain me as a football dummy compared to you. This new offense does rely on spreading the football to way more targets, doesn't it? That's why the running backs are used out of the backfield so much. That's why there's so much in the short pass game. This is why the 49ers sent what they did to trade for Christian McCaffrey, because he's got such the right skill set for his offense. Don't you need to spread the ball more in this offense, or is that
you don't need to. I mean, the Rams are the best example, because they changed this year from what Sean McVay's typically been, because they had some injuries at wide receiver. And, basically for a long stretch there when Devontae Adams went down, it was basically Puka or bust at wide receiver, who had a phenomenal year. And then they got all the tight ends involved. So you can do it different ways. It doesn't have to be. The more traditional way would be the 3rd receiver. But, the Rams happen to have 57 tight ends who can play. The Eagles don't have any tight ends under contract.
The Eagles have 0 right now that can play.
Well, they have 2 guys. E.J. Jenkins. They have futures guys.
Yeah, you're not trotting E.J. Jenkins out and playing 13 first round.
Team Bell.
Yeah.
But, so you can do it different ways. But, the easiest way is to get the 3rd receiver involved. But you got to have a 3rd receiver too. And maybe it's as simple as Darius Cooper. He showed some signs, can block too. That's important in this offense to have receivers who block. And he showed that he could do that.
Will that be as important?
Yeah, I think it's you could argue that's even more important, because when you stretch it as much as they do.
Got to get guys in the second level.
Yeah. And if you've seen, Puka and Cooper Kupp are just phenomenal blockers. So if you can find that level of blocker, wide receiver, and Darius Cooper's really thick, really strong. And he was such
clean up some of the mental lapses he had last year.
Though. He's a rookie out of Tarleton State.
That's true. Sure.
You're counting on some development. But what I liked about Darius Cooper is, look, he only took over that role because Johnny Wilson got hurt. And because he was never asked to block at Tarleton State, because he was the biggest playmaker in the country at that level.
He had all their yards every game at Tarleton State.
So I like the fact that he took to it, and just because you're big and you're strong doesn't mean you're physical. He's never been asked to do that, and he showed he can do it. And he also caught the ball when it came to him. which was not often, but that's a positive. I think he had 9 catches last year. So, I do have some hope that he can continue to develop. But you would certainly need a contingency plan at wide receiver 3 and some competition. And I think you can get a guy. I think that 3rd round sweet spots. And I got to look at where the Eagles are pick wise, because we're going to have to get more in the draft. But that to me, you can find a contributor. And right now they have 2 3rd-round picks, so 68 and 98. That to me is your sweet spot to find a receiver. And just looking you're talking about just looking at big boards. CJ Daniels from Miami. Zachariah Branch from Georgia. Skylar Bell from UConn. Malachi Fields from Notre Dame. He's a big physical guy, though. I don't think he'd fit as a wide receiver. Chris Brazil, Deion Burks. Man, this is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16. 16 players in the top 100 at wide receiver. 16. They grow receivers on trees. That's why during the Carson Wentz era, it was so frustrating that the Eagles couldn't find receivers. It's like everybody finds receivers. Now, I'm not talking about the level of the top tier, but just contributors. It has never been easier to find a receiver.
So we'll see what they end up doing. Does that make it easier potentially to move on from A.J. Brown? In theory, it does, but I don't know. I felt like,
that's different.
And the Eagles are not the Titans, so it's really a bad comp. I understand that, but I remember when the Titans were like, "Yeah, we're going to draft Treylon Burks and to replace A.J. Brown."
Yeah, that's different when you talk about the true top tier guys. Because I went through it with Randy Moss as well with Troy Williamson, who was like the 7th pick in the draft, and they were like the same way. Oh, we're going to replace Randy Moss with Troy Williamson. Not going to work. So AJ's on a different scale, different level. It ain't easy to find players like that, but it's easy to find contributors at that position. And look, if they lose AJ Brown, it's got to be a different plan. You gotta find a more impact. You can't just sit there and wait for 97.
You got to go and get somebody.
Yeah. And maybe DeVonta Smith can be a wide receiver 1. He's certainly got the talent. I worry.
Well, he's going to need a better 2 and 3 though than what he's got now. Or what?
Yeah. Oh yeah.
I mean, right now it would be Darius Cooper and Johnny Wilson, I think.
Yeah, and I don't think Johnny Wilson is another guy who I think is hurt by the shift in philosophy.
Yeah, majorly.
Maybe finally moves to tight end.
What about Ben Van Sumeren? He might be hurt from the philosophy switch as well.
Well, they're going to have a fullback. I think.
Wait, is Ben's contract up?
No, he's a restricted free agent, so he's not getting tendered. The restricted free agent tender is like over $3 million, so he's going to be unrestricted. And they're not going to tender him. So I don't think he's going to be back. They already signed a fullback on a futures deal. People might remember him from Kansas City, Carson Steele, brother of our guy, Caden Steele. I'm joking. They're not really brothers.
They're not really brothers.
Carson Steele.
Last name though, isn't it, John?
Oh, yeah. I always tell Caden he's like a Marvel character.
Yeah,
whatever the fuck. Caden Steele, it feels like, it feels like it's I might use that in a movie script I write. Caden Steele. Or Carson Steele might be. I'm sorry, Caden. That might even be better. Carson Steele. So they signed him and he had he played a little bit for Kansas City, but fullback is a bigger deal in this offense than it is in Look at Kyle Juszczyk. But again, it changes. McVay doesn't use it. So, if you have one, you use it. If you don't have one, you don't use it.
John, the timelines for this don't necessarily add up, but does what happens with A.J. Brown change what happens with Jahan Dotson? I know it changes what the Eagles do, but is there a small
forget about Jahan Dotson. He's not coming back.
No, I don't think so either. But I just didn't know. I mean, if you get rid of AJ, I think you feel better with Dotson as two, than you do.
That's one where I think it's mutually agreed upon to go in different directions. I don't think the Eagles were happy with it. I don't think
Dotson was never given a shot here, though.
I think that's why he's not coming back. He wants an opportunity somewhere. And
what happened? Apparently, him and Jalen Hurts had a powwow all summer last year, didn't they? They talked about that. Oh, we worked out together every day. Okay,
it's take it for what it's worth, but forget about Jahan Dotson. Don't worry.
Jahan Dotson. I'll see you next time. Thank you for the service, my friend.
And he'll get an opportunity somewhere. He's a talented guy. I mean, he'll. But that's part of the reason why. It's like, DeAndre Swift didn't want to play here because, he wanted to catch the ball more. And
DeAndre Swift's balling. And by the way, I can't get over Press Taylor being the offensive coordinator for
awesome.
Ben Johnson.
It's awesome. It's awesome.
The new great offensive mind in football that everybody loves has hired Press Taylor.
Oh, it's so for my purposes, for my selfish purposes, it's awesome. I was so excited. Excited.
I think it's awesome too.
I mean, because he's another guy. I mean, Press is a good dude. He's a good coach, and he just got shit on unfairly, completely unfairly. And I just think it's hilarious that the best offensive mind in football just hired him to be his offensive coordinator. I think it's great, and he was already there.
Press will be the head coach in a couple of years. Watch.
Yeah, I mean,
he'll hire Doug Peterson as his offensive coordinator. And they'll beat the Eagles in Super Bowl 63.
And he's getting more love with the 30 for 30 thing because evidently they mentioned him because he found the Philly special. But as with all coaching, he just, ironically, he stole that from the Chicago Bears, who ran it in a meaningless Week 18 game against the Vikings where neither was going to the playoffs, and the Bears ran it, and the Eagles saw it and said, hey, let's put that in the offense. And Press Taylor saw it and ran it up the flagpole, and the rest is history.
Yeah. All right, so staying on this receiver stuff, I do think it's an interesting thing because there's so much unknown, John. I mean, in theory, Mannion's new offense does create more target distribution. In theory, that's a theory only, but based on the offense that we think they're going to run. But that does kind of coincide or clash a little bit with the style of the quarterback who hasn't been a quarterback that gets to his third, fourth, read very often. So I wonder what that looks like this year.
Well, that's something we haven't talked about. Most of the Shanahan McVay stuff is pure progression from the quarterback's perspective,
like timing throws and stuff, right?
Well, I mean, it's either when we were talking about Kirk Cousins explained it better than anybody else.
Yeah, that was a great explanation.
Basically the newer way that most people were doing, and now it's shifting back to pure progression is, all right, you eliminate, you have the quarterback read the defense and he sees the coverage and he eliminates the basically cuts it down to 3 receivers. And that's what Kirk did for years. And then O'Connell showed up and he had to go back to pure progression. And he's like, what the fuck, man? So, I mean, that's, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, but, and obviously that is overblown as well, because nobody ever gets to 5. I mean, especially in this era of the NFL, you're dead in the water. So Steve Young had a great conversation with that way back with George Seifert. He was telling the story. George Seifert went to Joe Montana, who was obviously one of the great quarterbacks of all time. And he's like, why can't Steve Young progress through it? And Joe told him, yeah, I don't do that either. I just cut out, Joe was so smart. He would just realize the coverage are there. And Seifert, his own coach, is like, he thinks he's progressing. No, he already ruled that out pre-snap. Nobody can fucking progress to 5.
Yeah, right.
So, but it is going to be a change. The Eagles did some pure progression, and they sort of mixed in some, based on coverage. But that'll be interesting to see how Jalen Hurts and a lot of it. This offense does not fit this personnel. I'm sorry, it does not fit this personnel.
Well, do you think they'll stick with it all year? Do you think they'll have a Kellen Moore situation where they bail on it after 4 weeks?
That's a good question. I wish I could answer that. I would bail on it. I would bail on it right now.
Yeah. You can't fire Stoutland and then bail on the offense that you.
Hey man, I wouldn't have changed the offense. I mean, I'm on board. I get it. It was terrible looking. I get it. If you want to build a different way, all right. That's a longer term.
I'd bail on it. That's funny. That is funny.
If you want to build a different way and build a roster and rip it down and say, we're going to take a couple steps back and rebuild it up a different way. All right. What I don't get is doing this, because you got a square peg and you're trying to get it in a round hole.
You still don't believe this was, if Nick could have it his way, he wouldn't have done this.
I think, I can't say for sure. That's just my speculation.
I happen to agree with speculation.
Clearly. Yeah. I mean, I've spoken to Nick enough since he's been here that he's got a lot of confidence in himself when it comes to offensive football, and I find it very hard to believe that confidence wavered. So that's all I base that on. It's not him telling me or anybody telling me from the organization. I find it very hard to believe he woke up one day and said, you know what? I can't figure this out. Let me bring in 33-year-old Sean Mannion with 2 years of coaching experience.
With 35-year-old Josh Grizzard and 38-year-old Mahaffey and 43-year.
I find it very hard to believe. Sorry, Eagles. If you're listening, I find it very, very, very hard to believe.
So where does it come from? If it's not Nick, you think it's Howie? Is it Jeffrey?
It is not Howie.
Yeah, it's got to be the head of the snake, right?
Correct.
We'll see what happens, as they say, everybody. We got a couple super chats we will get to. John, just to close up the wide receiver talk real quick for the day, what is your honest belief right now about what you think happens? If I pinned you down, got a proverbial gun to the head and said, John, what happens with the Eagles wide receivers? Who do they trot out wide receiver 1, 2, and 3 at the start of the year? Now, I know you can't put a name on 3 because of the draft, and there's 50 different options. But
I'm back to over 50%, 52-48, AJ back. So it'll be AJ, DeVonta, and the 98th overall pick.
All right, 98th overall pick. And then Darius Cooper to boot at wide receiver 4?
Yeah.
All right. That's kind of how I feel as well. I think that's what it'll have. I'm starting to feel like AJ might be back. Now, I don't know. Maybe I'm falling for the banana. Cilio brought up a good point. He's like, see, Zander, you fell for it. He's on there. He's up there at the stage, talking about, everything, trying to smooth everything over. His agent's telling him, don't go out there and kill your value. Don't go out
there. Well, he's 100% true. I wrote about that bullshit regurgitation of NFL media on Super Bowl Sunday saying there's been no trade talks. Well, there's no trade talks because there's never any trade talks at this time of year. The trade talk stuff will heat up at the combine. So that was bullshit. And Mike Garafolo explained that, by the way. If you listen to the actual segment, he gave all the context. But the headline
is good. I like listening to Garafolo.
But the headline people are awful. There's no trade talks with, and the aggregators are even worse because they don't listen. They just, there's no trade talks. Well, they don't talk about trading anybody at this time of year. That will pick up at the end of the month. And you'll know. I wish I was there. I'm not going to be there, but you'll know because it's a big, it's a big convention, Indianapolis. Like, it's not about the combine. That is secondary. That's not that important other than for the health checks for the process.
When is the combine?
Late this month, February 28th, something like that. So, that's where all the free agency stuff, the foundation of the free agency stuff, whether it's signing guys, trading guys, that's where it all starts. That's the real tampering period, not the March 11th to March 13th, which is actually a legal negotiation period. The actual tampering happens before that in Indiana, and it starts in Indianapolis.
All right, good stuff there. We'll see what ends up happening here at the with everything that's going to unfold. How dare Brian Pumper? He just checked in and said, "No Johnny Wilson mentioned." Pump, are you listening? We talked about Johnny.
Yeah,
Come on.
We talked about Johnny. I even said they might move him to tight end now. How about that, Pumper? You've been on that. Hasn't Pumper been on that for
I don't know
since he got drafted?
Pumper thinks he's actually like an AJ Brown level receiver.
Oh, is he? I'm getting Pumper conflated with another.
Pump, you gotta set the record straight, Pump, on what you feel. Here's Pump. Speaking of him, we got 3 super chats from him, so he's gonna dominate the conversation for the next 10 minutes. Pumper says, J-Mac just lied. Tanner Montana threw a touchdown to AJ and Smitty that year. Let's stop the Jalenite pandering, sir.
I don't know why you try to go down this route, because it's very easy not to lie, Pumper. I don't lie to begin with, but you're talking about the final 4 throws of the game prior where he's in for 4 snaps. And he did. And that's when you turn him 4 snaps or whatever throws, that part of him. And you're conflating that into he's a starting level quarterback, which is even dumber than saying week 18. That doesn't matter because he played with backups. So it matters because he had 5 good throws with A.J. Brown and DeVonta Smith. You think that's going to convince Las Vegas to, hey, we're not drafting Mendoza. Did you see these 5 throws?
4 beautiful snaps.
And a blowout? Come on, dude. You're embarrassing yourself.
Here's Pump again. He says, fellas, do you think Steve Young intended to crop Hurts out of this picture? New nickname, half of Hurts, half of amazing. He only plays a half a game. Did you see what he's talking about here? I guess Steve Young put up a picture of him all at the game, and Hurts was cropped out. Half of Hurts was available. I don't know what the fuck.
No idea. If he's trying to post a picture of himself, well, yeah, why does he want Jalen Hurts?
No, it was the picture of all the group.
Oh, and he just cut out Jalen Hurts?
Yeah, but it was one of those things where Jalen was on the end of the picture, and you have a 60.
Obviously, you can't crop him. You can't crop him out.
He doesn't know how to post the right way. He doesn't know how to crop an image the right way. So
what? People are just so the Jalenites are so just sensitive about everything. My guess is Steve Young didn't give a shit, and yeah,
that's my guess too.
That's how the computer cropped the image.
That's exactly what I said. Here's Pumper. Last one from Pump. Fellas, y'all looking at it all wrong. This is a Shanahan system. We need a yak guy at wide receiver, a Debo Puka type, a wide receiver with a running back body.
Well, I mean, yards after catch is important. It's not easy to get a Puka type. Debo, had a small window until he got out of shape. But, it's a big part of it. The manufactured touch aspect will be a big part of it as well. Lining guys up in the backfield, that'll be a big part of it as well. You can't just one of the things fans I think get mixed up is like, well, you need a Debo Samuel type, you need a Puka. As Sean McVay felt, well, you don't have that, you do this. I don't have a third receiver. I'm going to play a bunch of 12 and 13 personnel because I got a bunch of tight ends. I don't have this. I'm going to use that. I don't have a fullback. I'm not going to use a fullback. San Francisco has a fullback. They use a fullback. You have the best maybe pass receiving back of all time. You're going to utilize them more than if you don't have them with Christian McCaffrey. And the San Francisco, when he was hurt the year prior, they shifted and they're playing Jordan Mason, who's a bruiser. The good coaches utilize what they have, and that's my problem with the Eagles shifting gears, because they built the team a certain way, and now they're saying, oh, we have to play this way, and they're not built to play this way, at least right now. Now you can start doing that in the draft and free agency, and if you really want to go this way, you got to start getting talent that fits better. But as McVay's the best example of this year, because he went to play so much 13 personnel. He had been the 11 personnel guy. All he does is run 11. He shows up this year and he's running more 13 than anybody, because that's what he had.
Good stuff there. We'll see what ends up happening with this Eagles offense. I do think John is on to a good point there, though, where we know what the offense is trying to be, but what is it actually going to be? We'll find out in the year. I'm going to give everybody just a real quick look at the draft order that the Eagles have. So this is it on your screen right now. You can see this is the Eagles picks, and we will see how they use those picks here in the NFL draft. So it's going to be interesting to see what they end up doing, John, in the NFL draft. That's from NFLDraftBuzz.com. A lot ahead of us here, John, in the offseason at the very start of this thing, and a lot of changes are happening in Eagle land. There's a lot to talk about this offseason, J-Mac.
Yeah. This is going to be the most uncertain offseason. You've already seen it from the coaching staff. You got a bunch of new coaches. You're going to have a few more. Typically the Eagles go in, and there's an example. I wrote about that very, very rarely, because the Eagles have been so entrenched from a personnel standpoint. Very rarely have young players gotten an opportunity to earn a role. You're going to see that. It might be Darius Cooper that we talked about. It might be, one of the offensive linemen that they drafted on day 3. It might be, Jeremiah Trotter getting more involved if Nakobe Dean leaves. There's going to be more opportunity for younger players, and I think the shift in philosophy as well will enable that. But yeah, from where we've been, this is way more uncertain than it typically has been for the Philadelphia Eagles.
We'll see what they end up doing here, John. It's going to be very interesting this offseason, and especially with this new coaching staff, how it's all going to look. I am curious to see how it all plays out, and whether they overreacted, John. I think at the end of the day, that's a fair question, man. Is this team way overreacted?
Yes.
I know you think yes, for sure. I mean, and I get why.
Yes.
Won 11 games. They're one of the winningest teams in the last 5 years in the NFL.
They have acted like a 4-win team.
But their offense did suck. And don't you agree with that?
It did. It did suck.
And if in theory the running game would not return to what it was, is this the best way forward? I know it's easy to say, well, just fix the run game, but that's a multi-pronged fix, not so simple.
Well, what's a multi-pronged fix is bringing in the personnel to run this scheme.
Yeah, it's changing every coach on your own.
That's a multi-pronged
changing every offensive coach.
My and I know it's not acceptable to people, but my answer would have been to try to undo what you've done with Jalen Hurts over the past 2 years from the risk aversion standpoint. Get to a better place and say, hey, all right, we want to take care of the football, but it's okay to take a chance here and there. It's a fine line, and you don't want to go too far either way, and it's easier said than done. I have to convince him that the +1 in a running game has to be part of the equation. Whether he doesn't want to do it or the Eagles didn't want to do it, it doesn't matter. Both sides have to realize that's got to be back in the equation. And I think that fixes a lot of your issues. Now, look, the whether AJ wants to be back, that's still a big part of the conversation. Less likely to want to be back under the old school format, even with some tweaks. That's certainly part of it. Again, the injuries to Landon Dickerson and Lane Johnson and where they're going to be, that doesn't change. But man, they got a long stretch of demonstrated history of performing well and winning a lot of football games. And to throw that baby out with the bathwater because they won 11 games and had a shitty performance against San Francisco, that sounds like panic to me.
It does, but is there a way to look at it where the league did catch up with the offense that they were running? It wasn't going to work like it.
Yeah, but why did they catch up to it? Why did it? Did they catch up to it because they just figured it out, or did they catch up to it because Landon Dickerson couldn't move and Lane Johnson wasn't there and Cam Jurgens was coming back from a back injury because Jalen Hurts decided, or someone decided for him, not to run the football? Why? That to me is a bigger question. And I think it leans towards guys not performing up to their previous standard, not the shitty high school scheme, which I've said from day one. You know this, Zander. Other people could make up their narratives, but you know this. I've said from day one, this is not a pretty offense. It is not an aesthetic offense. It never has been. It wasn't in 2022. It wasn't in 2024. You like the results, but it wasn't creative.
Yeah, it wasn't emotion and I get what you're saying.
But they had a lot of success with it because their players were better than the other players.
Are the Eagles setting Sean Mannion up for failure, or are the Eagles setting Jalen Hurts up for failure? Or are they setting nobody up for failure? Well, how do you view that part of it?
I don't think they're setting people up for failure. I think
not intentionally. I'm not saying intentionally. I'm saying you hired Sean Mannion and you told him you wanted to bring in this new offense, knowing that the players and the personnel you have on the team are probably not the best fit for that offense.
Well, and from Sean's perspective, I'm sure, as a young guy, he's got confidence in his abilities. He'll come in with, tremendous optimism that he can teach these players, his concepts and get it going in the right direction. And while doing that, bringing in more players that fit what he wants to do. And I'm sure you have to have confidence to perform. And he's been a quarterback his entire life. So I'm sure he's not, that position generally almost always generates confident people because you have to be leaders. He performed at a high level in college. He's in the NFL. You can say, well, he's a backup. He's in the fucking NFL for a decade, basically, as a player. I'm sure he's not wavering for any competence. So I'm sure he looks at it as a great opportunity, and it is a great opportunity for him. But if you look at it from a realistic standpoint, clearly, I mean, they're in a situation to where if they don't get this thing going in the right direction toward a very, very high standard, Nick Sirianni is going to get fired. If Nick Sirianni gets fired, guess what? The next coach, whoever it is, isn't going to hold over coordinators. Just doesn't work that way. Maybe an assistant or two because he can't get somebody else. But when's the last time an offensive or defensive coordinator was a holdover? Now, you see it sometimes. Cleveland tried to pull it off. You see it sometimes with an offensive-minded guy will keep a defensive coordinator, but they never keep an offensive coordinator, or vice versa. If the defensive-minded guy's the head coach, same thing. They might keep the offensive guy, but they're not keeping the defensive guy. So
we'll see how it plays out. One more super chat, John, to wrap up the show today. HKP, thank you, brother. Again, $20 super chat. Appreciate your support today, my man. He says, Z, I'm going to say it one more time. The Eagles struggled to get star receivers for years. A.J. Brown is not going anywhere. In your opinion, J-Mac and Z, who is the top priority for us to re-sign or go pick up as a free agent?
Well, again, I always say in free agency, in-house first. What do you get done in-house? Is AJ back?
I am a tight end. Like, are any of the tight end options that are potential to bring in draft free agents outside of Goddard? Are they better than Goddard? I don't see one.
He's 30. He's going to be 32, man.
I know, but do you bring him back for another?
Well, obviously, I mean, David Njoku said he's leaving Cleveland. Now he makes a lot of money. Has made a lot of money. He's probably still better, but he's 30. Pitts obviously is better, and he's 26, but you're not going in that direction. He's 30. He's going to be 32 years old. That's just not the way.
If he'll take a $10 million deal again, do you do it?
Well, and that's the second part. Why would Dallas Goedert do that after you made him take a $4 million pay cut?
Well, you've speculated that, or that you've talked about how, he is older. Maybe he doesn't get that much money in the open market, John.
Well, that's the case. The market demands what the market demands. So, yeah, maybe the comfort of staying in the same place. He's only known one professional home.
Yep.
So maybe that factors into it. He's going to test the open market.
Yeah, and if he gets,
and I think because teams aren't not that smart either. And because he had a bunch of touchdowns this year, I think he's going to get paid. I think he's going to get a 2-year deal and he's going to get paid a decent amount. And I think the Eagles are out at that point. But when it comes to his answer, again, it's backwards. You got to wait. If you're trading AJ, all of a sudden wide receiver gets very amped up. If you can't sign Jalen Phillips, then edge defender gets really amped up. If you keep both of them, then those positions aren't even in the equation.
You'll probably still do a late round pick on a receiver, right? If you kept AJ.
Yeah, but I'm talking about, the question.
You're talking about premium spots. You're talking about big signings,
exactly.
Yeah.
So the in-house stuff takes precedent, and my presumption is that Jalen Phillips will be the number one priority. And if they get him done, obviously that eliminates the edge. And they have to make a decision pretty quickly with AJ Brown, because he's the type of player that makes a crap load of money. And that means when you have the opportunity to trade for a player like that, you need to do it early when you have the budget to do it. And so that to me is going to happen now. It'll be probably post June 1st designated to have help with the cap situation. And the best case scenario would be to get him back for Philadelphia for at least one more year. But we're going to see how that plays out, because obviously you all saw, I think you might crap on media people, you might crap on Diana, as you usually do. Everything was true. He's not happy. He was not happy. He's very frustrated. Nobody was lying to you. And we're going to see if they can fix it.
We'll find out. Johnny Mac, your final thought here on a Tuesday edition of Birds 365.
Yeah, I guess that's it. In-house first. Don't put the cart before the horse, or whatever the expression is. I might be reversing it. I mean, they got to figure out where they are, and then you supplement in free agency. So
we'll see if they do. Johnny Mac, great show, brother. I will talk to you tomorrow on a Wednesday edition of Birds 365. Thank you, brother.
All right. Thanks, all.
All right. Thanks, J Mac. There's Johnny Mac. John McMullen joining us right here on Birds 365. Great show today. A lot of good topics we covered today. Covered wide receiver 3. Covered some of the draft. Covered some of free agency. All right. Starting to look more toward those topics as we fill it out. We talked a little bit about Chris Cooper and the potential of his first draft class. O-line is obviously a position of need. We even mentioned the greatness of Tanner McKee today. I mean, we mentioned Tanner McKee, Jahan Dotson today, with tight ends, wide receivers, Chris Cooper, O-line, Johnny Wilson. I mean, we talked about everybody today. So good show today. I felt like we needed to have one of those reset off-season shows where it's like, all right, where are we? What's ahead of us? What do we got ahead of us? Not so much analyzing, okay, this is what they did. This is who they hired. Where are we in the offseason? Where are we going in the offseason? What's next? And what will it look like when it's done, or speculating what it looks like when it's done. So we are finding those things out. I got bad news for everybody. I cannot do much of a Zander time today. I got to get on the road, get back to my studio. You can see I'm still. I got the green screen. It's a wall. All right. I know you guys thought I was at Lincoln Financial Field. It's a wall. So I got to get back to my studio. That's probably why my mic might be a little hollow as well. So I got to get out of Dodge so I can get back, make it home for the Cilio National Football Show. Got to wrap up, got to clean up, got to get all my shit together. Got to load the vet up and then drive in this nasty weather. Boy, it's been cold out. I think it's supposed to be a little warmer today, which is a good thing. All right. I think it's going to be a little warmer today. So, yeah, it's up in the 30s today, which is good. Up in the 30s today. So there you go. It's a little warmer today. A little warmer today. All right. I appreciate all you guys. Hit the like button. All right. Drop your comments down below. Thanks, everybody, for listening, for tuning in, as always. All right. We got a great offseason in front of us. The draft, free agency, everything that's going to come with it. So appreciate y'all being here. Hit the like button. See you next time, everybody.
EAGLES. Eagle.